A desperate search in the wilderness. A young Mustang separated from its herd, lost and vulnerable in the unforgiving desert. When Emely Martinez discovered fresh hoofprints leading nowhere, she knew time was running out. This incredible story of determination, hope, and the powerful bond between mother and child will touch your heart. Stay with us to witness a remarkable journey that proves love knows no boundaries and miracles can happen even in the darkest moments. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Nevada desert as Emely Martinez guided her trusted quarter horse, Thunder, along the rugged terrain of Red Rock Canyon. The early spring air carried a hint of warmth, but the nights were still cold enough to worry any experienced ranch hand. Emely adjusted her weathered leather jacket, her eyes constantly scanning the horizon as she had done every morning for the past week. The landscape stretched endlessly before her, a tapestry of rust-colored cliffs and golden brush dotted with patches of hardy desert vegetation. Emely had grown up in these parts, working alongside her father at the wild horse sanctuary they'd established 15 years ago. She knew every ridge, every waterhole, and every seasonal migration pattern of the local Mustang herds. But this morning felt different. There was an urgency in the air she couldn't shake. 3 days ago, they'd received reports from local hikers about a distressed mare separated from her herd, frantically searching the canyon lands. Emely had been tracking the situation ever since, and yesterday's discovery had sent a chill down her spine. Fresh tracks of a young foal, no more than 4 months old, heading deep into territory where water was scarce and predators were. Plenty, Thunder's ears suddenly pricked forward, and Emely felt him tense beneath her. She pulled back gently on the reins, letting her horse's keen senses guide her. The morning silence was broken only by the soft whisper of wind through the sagebrush and the distant cry of a red-tailed hawk circling overhead. Emely reached for her binoculars, scanning the rocky outcroppings that dotted the landscape. "What do you hear, boy?" she murmured, patting Thunder's neck as he shifted restlessly beneath her. The quarter horse had been her companion for over 8 years, and she'd learned to trust his instincts. Something had caught his attention, and Emely knew better than to ignore it. As they waited, the wind carried a sound that made Emily's heart race. A distant whinny, high-pitched and desperate, echoing off the canyon walls. It was the unmistakable call of a mare searching for her foal. Emely quickly checked her GPS coordinates and reached for her radio. "Base, this is Emely. I'm picking up signs of the mare in Sector 7, heading northeast toward Devil's Backbone. Going to investigate further, over." The radio crackled with static before her father's voice came through, concern evident in his tone. "Copy that, Emely. Be careful out there. Weather report shows a cold front moving in by nightfall. If you don't find anything in the next few hours, head back to base. We can resume the search tomorrow. Over." Emely acknowledged the warning, but she had no intention of giving up. She'd seen too many young foals lost to the harsh desert environment, and each loss weighed heavily on her heart. This time would be different. It had to be. Guiding Thunder toward the sound, Emely began to notice more signs that told the story of the separated pair. Torn vegetation where the mare had grazed hastily, scattered hoof prints in the sandy soil, and most concerning, the smaller tracks of the foal leading in a different direction. The young horse had probably been spooked by something, perhaps a coyote or the sudden movement of a rattlesnake, and bolted away from its mother in panic. The sun climbed higher in the sky as Emely followed the trail, her experienced eyes picking up details that others might miss. The foal's tracks showed signs of exhaustion, the steps becoming more erratic and unclear. She pulled out her water canteen, taking a small sip as she considered her options. The terrain ahead grew more treacherous, with steep ravines and loose shale that could spell disaster for an inexperienced young horse. Thunder suddenly stopped, his nostrils flaring as he tested the air. Emely leaned forward in her saddle, every sense alert. The wind had shifted, carrying with it the distinct smell of rain. The cold front was moving in faster than predicted. Dark clouds were beginning to gather on the horizon, and Emely knew they were running out of time. "Come on, Thunder," she urged, guiding him forward. "We need to find them before this storm hits." As they pressed on, Emily's mind wandered to the stories her father had told her about these wild horses. The Mustangs had roamed these lands for generations, their bloodlines carrying the strength and resilience of countless survivors. But even the strongest bloodlines couldn't protect a young foal from the dangers of separation. The cold nights, the predators, and most critically, the lack of its mother's milk and guidance. The radio at her hip crackled again, this time with updates from other search teams spread across the territory. No significant sightings, but everyone was on high alert. The Wild Horse Sanctuary had built its reputation on protecting these magnificent creatures, and news of a lost foal had mobilized their entire network of volunteers and staff. Emely checked her watch. Nearly noon now. The temperature had dropped noticeably as the storm clouds continued to gather, casting shadows across the landscape that seemed to dance and shift with each gust of wind. She'd covered almost 15 miles since dawn, and Thunder was showing signs of fatigue, but her determination never wavered. Rounding a bend in the canyon, Emely caught movement out of the corner of her eye. She quickly raised her binoculars, her breath catching in her throat. There, about half a mile ahead, stood the mare they'd been looking for. The horse's coat was dusty and sweat-stained, evidence of her relentless search for her missing foal. She was beautiful, a classic bay with a distinctive white blaze running down her face, her muscles tense as she scanned the horizon. Emely watched as the mare paced anxiously, stopping occasionally to let out another call that echoed through the canyon. The sound was heart-wrenching, filled with a mother's desperation and fear. Carefully, Emely guided Thunder closer, making sure to stay downwind to avoid startling the already stressed animal. "Base, I've got eyes on the mare," Emely reported, quietly into her radio. "She's near the eastern edge of Devil's Backbone. No sign of the foal yet, but she's actively searching. Going to maintain visual contact and continue tracking over." The response came quickly, her father's voice tight with concern. "Weather's turning bad fast, Emely. That storm's picking up speed. You've got maybe 2 hours before it hits full. Your force. Don't take any unnecessary risks, over." Emely acknowledged the warning, but her focus remained on the mare. Years of experience had taught her that finding one would eventually lead to the other. The bond between mother and foal was one of the strongest forces in nature. As she watched, the mare suddenly lifted her head, ears pricked forward, and let out another call. This time, something changed in the tone. There was a new urgency that made Emily's pulse quicken. Thunder sensed it too, his own ears swiveling to catch some sound that human ears couldn't detect. Emely waited, barely breathing as the mare called again. And then, carried on the wind, came a response, faint but unmistakable, the answering cry of a young foal. The mare's reaction was immediate, her whole body tensing as she pinpointed the direction of the sound. Emely quickly consulted her GPS, marking their location. The foal's cry had come from somewhere near the treacherous maze of ravines to the east, an area locals called the Devil's Fingers for its sharp, protruding rock formations. Time was running out. The storm clouds now loomed directly overhead, and the first few drops of rain began to fall, pattering against Emely's jacket. She knew what was at stake. In this terrain, a flash flood could develop within minutes of heavy rain, turning dry washouts into raging torrents. The foal had to be found, and quickly. Emely touched her heels to Thunder's flanks, urging him forward as the mare began to move with renewed purpose. They would follow her lead. A mother's instinct was rarely wrong. As they rode, the wind picked up strength, whipping Emely's dark hair around her face, despite the tight braids she wore. The temperature continued to drop, and she could feel Thunder's muscles bunching beneath her, responding to the growing tension in the air. This was the moment where experience and instinct had to work together. Emely knew these canyons like the back of her hand, but she also knew their dangers. One wrong turn in the maze of ravines ahead could prove fatal, especially with a storm bearing down on them. But somewhere in that labyrinth was a young foal, alone and afraid, calling for its mother. Emely Martinez had never been one to back down from a challenge, especially when a life hung in the balance. As they approached the entrance to the Devil's Fingers, the first rumble of thunder rolled across the sky, an ominous warning of what was to come. Emely pulled her jacket tighter, checked her emergency gear one last time, and took a deep breath. The real challenge was just beginning, and she knew the next few hours would test every skill she'd developed in her years of working. With wild horses, the mare ahead had slowed her pace, picking her way carefully through the narrow passages between the towering rock formations. Emely followed at a distance, trusting in the wild horse's maternal instinct while staying close enough to assist if needed. The rain was falling steadily now, making the rocky ground treacherous and filling the air with the sharp scent of wet, sage and stone. The rain intensified as Emely guided Thunder deeper into the maze of towering rock formations. The Devil's Fingers lived up to its name, with jagged spires of red sandstone reaching toward the darkening sky like grasping hands. Water began to trickle down the canyon walls, creating miniature waterfalls that sparkled despite the gloom. The mare ahead moved with increasing urgency, her hooves sure and steady on the treacherous ground. Emely pulled out her radio again, knowing she needed to update base before the weather deteriorated further. "Base, this is Emely. We're entering the Devil's Fingers following the mare. Heard signs of the foal in this direction. Signal might get patchy due to the terrain. Over." The response was broken, static cutting through her father's voice. "Emely, dangerous, storm, back." The rest was lost in a crackle of interference. Emely tucked the radio away, knowing she was on her own now. The towering rocks would block most signals until she made it back to higher ground. Thunder moved cautiously beneath her, his years of experience in rough terrain evident in every careful step. The narrow passages between the rock formations created a natural maze, with some channels barely wide enough for horse and rider to pass through. The wind, funneled by the stone corridors, whistled and moaned, creating an eerie chorus that seemed to come from all directions. The mare ahead suddenly stopped, her ears swiveling as another cry echoed through the canyon. This time, Emely heard it clearly. The desperate call of a young foal, closer now but still hidden somewhere in the labyrinth of stone. The mare responded with a deep, resonant whinny that bounced off the canyon walls, creating a cacophony of sound that made it difficult to pinpoint the foal's location. "Easy, Thunder," Emely murmured as her horse danced nervously beneath her. The storm was getting worse, with lightning now flashing in the distance. Each flash illuminated the canyon in stark relief, casting sharp shadows that seemed to move and shift in the uncertain light. The rain had become a steady downpour, and Emely could hear the ominous sound of water beginning to rush through the deeper channels of the maze. The mare moved forward again, her determination evident in every step. Emely followed, noting how the wild horse seemed to be following a specific path through the maze. Years of experience had taught her that Mustangs often had an uncanny knowledge of the safest routes through dangerous terrain. Knowledge passed down through generations of survival in these harsh lands. As they rounded another bend, Emely's heart jumped into her throat. The passage ahead narrowed dramatically, with smooth, nearly vertical walls rising on either side. At its narrowest point, it couldn't have been more than 3 feet wide, a tight squeeze for a horse and rider. But the mare didn't hesitate, moving forward with single-minded purpose. Emely quickly dismounted, knowing Thunder would need guidance to navigate the narrow gap. "Come on, boy," she encouraged, leading him forward by the reins. The rain made the footing treacherous, and Emely had to press herself against the canyon wall to make room for Thunder to pass. The quarter horse moved slowly but steadily, trusting in Emely's guidance despite his obvious nervousness. Just as they cleared the narrowest part of the passage, a sound stopped them in their tracks. A desperate whinny, followed by the clatter of loose rocks. And it was close. Very close. The mare ahead had already broken into a trot, her hooves sure despite the slick ground. Emely quickly remounted Thunder, knowing they couldn't afford to lose sight of their guide now. The passage opened into a small box canyon, its walls rising steep and smooth on 3 sides. The mare stood at its center, calling out again and again, her voice growing more urgent with each cry. Emely's experienced eyes quickly scanned the area, looking for any sign of the missing foal. The rain made visibility poor, but something about the way the mare was behaving told her they were close. A flash of lightning illuminated the canyon, and Emely caught movement on one of the higher ledges. There, precariously perched about 20 feet up, stood the lost foal. The young horse was pressed against the canyon wall, clearly terrified, its dark coat slick with rain. How it had managed to climb up there was a mystery, but getting it down safely would be an even greater challenge. "Base, this is Emely." She tried the radio again, knowing it was unlikely to get through. "Found the foal. Box Canyon in the Devils. Fingers. Going to need backup when possible. Over." Nothing but static answered her, but she had to try. The situation was becoming more dangerous by the minute. The mare was now moving back and forth beneath the ledge, calling to her foal. The young horse responded with weak, nickering sounds, but made no move to try descending the steep rock face. Emely could see why. The ledge was narrow, and the rain had made the stone treacherously slick. One wrong step could be fatal. Emely quickly assessed her options. The canyon walls were too steep and smooth to climb directly, but she noticed a series of smaller ledges and cracks off to one side that might provide a route up. It would be dangerous, especially in these conditions, but she couldn't leave the foal stranded with the storm getting worse. Securing Thunder's reins to a sturdy outcropping, Emely pulled her emergency rope from her saddlebags. She'd done plenty of rock climbing in her years of rescue work, but usually in much better conditions. The rain was coming down harder now, and she could hear the increasing rush of water somewhere nearby. A sound that sent a chill down her spine. "Stay put, boy," She patted Thunder's neck before moving toward the canyon wall. The mare watched her intently, and Emely spoke softly to her as well. "Don't worry, Mama. I'm going to help your baby." The first 10 feet of the climb were relatively straightforward, with enough handholds and ledges to make steady progress despite the rain. But as Emely got higher, the route became more challenging. The rock was slick, and some of the holds she'd spotted from below turned out to be looser than they appeared. 15 feet up, Emely paused to catch her breath and reassess her position. The foal was now just a few yards to her right, still huddled against the canyon wall. She could see it more clearly now, a beautiful dark bay colt, probably no more than 4 months old. It was thin and obviously exhausted, but appeared uninjured. "Hey there, little one," Emely called softly, trying to keep her voice calm and steady despite her precarious position. The foal's ears swiveled toward her, showing interest, but also fear. Below, the mare let out another call, and the foal responded. With a weak nicker, Emely carefully worked her way closer, testing each hold before putting her full weight on it. The rain was making everything treacherous, and she could feel the cold beginning to seep through her wet clothes. Just a few more feet, she told herself, fighting against the growing numbness in her fingers. Finally, she reached the ledge where the foal stood. It was wider than it had appeared from below, but still narrow enough to be dangerous. The young horse shied away as she pulled herself up, pressing itself even harder against the canyon wall. "Easy. Now," Emely soothed, staying low and moving slowly. "I know you're scared, but we need to get you down from here." She carefully uncoiled the rope she'd brought, knowing she'd need it to help guide the foal down safely. The mare below continued to call, which helped keep the young horse's attention divided between Emely and its mother. Time was running out. Emely could hear the water flow in the canyon increasing, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. Flash floods were a real danger in these narrow canyons, and being trapped on this ledge when one hit didn't bear thinking about. With slow, careful movements, Emely managed to get the rope around the foal's neck, creating a makeshift guide rope that would help control its descent. The young horse was surprisingly cooperative, perhaps sensing that Emely was trying to help or simply too exhausted to resist. The real challenge would be getting down. The route Emely had used to climb up would be too dangerous for the foal, but she'd spotted what looked like a more gradual slope off to the other side. If they could reach it, they might have a chance. "Come on, little one," she encouraged, gently tugging the rope. The foal took a hesitant step forward, then another. Below, the mare's calls became more excited, encouraging her baby to move. Emely kept the rope steady, using it to guide the young horse along the ledge toward the potential escape route. The descent would be the most dangerous part. One wrong step could send either of them tumbling down the rock face. Emely knew she had to stay focused, despite the rain that now seemed to be coming from all directions and the growing rumble of water in the canyon below. Emely inched forward along the ledge, keeping tension on the guide rope as the foal followed. Cautiously behind her, the rain drummed against the canyon walls, creating small rivulets that snaked down the red stone. Each step required careful consideration. The rock was becoming increasingly slippery, and one mistake could prove catastrophic. For both of them, the mare below paced anxiously, letting out encouraging whinnies that echoed off the canyon walls. Thunder stood quietly where Emely had left him, but his ears were pricked forward, alert to the growing sound of rushing water. The storm was intensifying, and Emely could feel the wind picking up, creating swirling eddies of rain that reduced visibility even further. As they reached the point where the ledge began to slope downward, Emely paused to study their route more carefully. What had looked promising from a distance now revealed its challenges. The gradual slope was still steep, with loose scree and weather-worn patches that could give way under their weight. "Okay, little one," Emely spoke softly to the foal, who was trembling but staying close to her. "We're going to take this nice and slow." She adjusted her grip on the rope, making sure it was secure but not too tight around the young horse's neck. The foal's dark coat was plastered to its body, highlighting how thin it had become during its time alone. The first few steps down were the hardest. The foal was understandably hesitant, its hooves sliding slightly on the wet rock. Emely maintained steady pressure on the rope, providing guidance and support without forcing the animal. Years of experience had taught her that patience was crucial in these situations. Rushing could lead to panic, and panic could be fatal. A crack of thunder directly overhead made both Emely and the foal jump. The young horse let out a frightened whinny, starting to back up toward the ledge they'd just left. Emely quickly shortened the rope, speaking in low, soothing tones. "Easy now, easy. We're okay. Your mama's waiting for you down there." As if on cue, the mare called out again, her voice carrying clearly despite the storm. The foal's ears swiveled toward the sound, and some of the tension left its body. Emely seized the moment, gently encouraging the young horse forward again. They needed to get down before the weather got any worse. The descent was painfully slow. Every few steps, Emely had to stop and reassess their position, looking for the safest path down the rocky slope. The rain continued to pour, making each foothold a potential hazard. She could feel the cold seeping into her bones, but she couldn't afford to let it distract her from the task at hand. Halfway down, they encountered their first major obstacle. A section of the slope had been worn smooth by years of weathering, creating a nearly vertical drop of about 5 feet. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give both Emely and the foal pause. The mare below seemed to sense their predicament, moving closer to the base of the slope and calling out more urgently. Emely studied the situation, knowing they couldn't go back up. The slope was too slippery now, and their only option was to find a way down. She noticed a series of small ledges to their left that might provide an alternative route, but reaching them would require traversing a narrow section of rock. "Come on, buddy," she encouraged the foal, slowly leading it sideways along the slope. The young horse followed willingly now, seeming to understand that Emely was trying to help. Its natural agility was impressive, even in these treacherous conditions. Just as they reached the series of ledges, a sound made Emely's blood run cold, the unmistakable roar of water surging through the canyon. She looked down to see a brown torrent rounding the bend below them, carrying branches and debris. The flash flood she'd been dreading had arrived. Thunder reared up, pulling at his reins as the water rushed past. The mare danced nervously but held her ground, still focused on her foal above. Emely knew they had minutes, maybe less, before the water rose to dangerous levels. "No time for careful now," she muttered, quickly reassessing their situation. The ledges she'd spotted would have to do. She shortened the rope further, keeping the foal close as they began picking their way down the natural steps in the rock. Face, the young horse seemed to sense the urgency, following Emely's guidance with surprising trust. Each ledge provided a brief respite before the next descent, but the water below was rising quickly, its roar growing louder with each passing moment. Emily's fingers were numb from cold and tension, but she maintained her grip on the rope. The foal's hooves clattered against the wet rock as they made their way down, sending small showers of loose stones into the surging water below. The mare continued to call out, her voice now tinged with fear as the floodwaters swirled around her legs. They were almost at the bottom when disaster struck. The foal, tired and cold, misstepped on one of the final ledges. Its back legs slipped, and for a heart-stopping moment, Emely thought they were both going to fall. She braced herself against the rock face, holding tight to the rope as the young horse scrambled to regain its footing. "You're okay, you're okay," she repeated, as much to herself as to the foal. The young horse was trembling violently now, but it had managed to find its balance again. Just 10 more feet to go, but they were perhaps the most dangerous 10 feet. Yet, the water below had risen to chest height on the mare, who was now standing on higher ground near Thunder. Emely could see debris floating past, branches, bushes, and even what looked like parts of a fence. They needed to get down now before the flood rose any higher. Taking a deep breath, Emely made a decision. The remaining distance was relatively straight down, but there was enough texture in the rock face to provide some purchase. She wrapped the rope around her waist for additional security, then began guiding the foal down the final stretch. The young horse, despite its exhaustion, seemed to find renewed energy as it neared its mother. Its movements became more confident, following Emily's lead as they picked their way down the rock face. The mare's encouraging calls never ceased, providing a constant beacon through the storm. With a final scramble that sent a shower of loose rocks into the floodwaters, they reached the ground. The foal immediately rushed to its mother, nearly pulling Emely off her feet before she could untie the rope. The reunion was brief, but intense, the mare quickly checking her baby over while positioning herself between the foal and the rising water. Emely didn't waste any time watching the touching scene. The floodwaters were still rising, and they needed to find higher ground immediately. She quickly made her way to Thunder, who was showing signs of increasing distress at the rushing water now swirling around his legs. "Base, this is Emely." She tried the radio again as she mounted. "Found the flash flood in the devil's fingers. Moving to higher ground, over." The static-filled response was unintelligible, but she thought she caught the word helicopter before the signal died completely. The mare needed no encouragement to move, already leading her foal toward higher ground. Emely guided Thunder after them, grateful for both horses' natural instinct to seek safety. The water was moving faster now, carrying larger debris and creating dangerous eddies in the narrow canyon. They made their way along the canyon wall, staying on the highest ground available. The roar of the flood was deafening, drowning out even the thunder that still rolled overhead. Emely kept her eyes on the mare and foal ahead, trusting the wild horse's instinct to find the safest path out. The next few minutes were a blur of careful navigation and constant vigilance. The floodwaters continued to rise, forcing them to climb higher up the canyon's slopes. Emily's years of experience in these canyons proved invaluable as she spotted a familiar route that would lead them to safer ground, if they could reach it in time. The path ahead narrowed dangerously as Emely guided Thunder behind the mare and her foal. Water cascaded down the canyon walls in sheets now, creating treacherous conditions on the already slick rock. The sound of the flood below had become a constant roar, punctuated by the crack of thunder and the hollow boom of debris slamming against stone. Emely recognized the route they were taking. An old game trail that switched back and forth up the canyon wall, eventually leading to a plateau above the flood zone. But reaching it would be challenging in these conditions. The trail was steep and narrow, never meant for regular horse traffic, and the rain had turned much of it into a muddy slide. The mare led the way, her maternal instincts driving her forward. Despite the dangerous conditions, her foal stayed close, showing remarkable stamina despite its ordeal. Emely could see the young horse was struggling, its legs trembling with exhaustion, but the presence of its mother seemed to give it the strength to continue. Thunder moved carefully beneath Emely, his years of experience evident in every calculated step. The quarter horse's muscles were tense, but he remained focused, following Emely's guidance as they navigated the treacherous path. A sudden gust of wind brought another sheet of rain, forcing Emely to squint against the stinging droplets. "Base, this is Emely." She tried the radio one more time, having to shout over the storm. "We're heading up the north wall of Devil's Fingers, following the old game trail to high ground over." The response was lost in a burst of static, but she thought she heard rotors in the distance. The rescue helicopter might be nearby. The trail grew steeper as they climbed higher, forcing them to move in short zigzags across the face of the canyon. Each switchback was a test of nerve and skill, with the drop-off becoming more severe with every foot they gained in elevation. The floodwaters below had transformed the canyon floor into a churning river of brown water and debris. Halfway up, they encountered a section where part of the trail had washed away, leaving a gap of about 6 feet. The mare paused, nickering softly to her foal as she assessed the situation. Emely held Thunder back, watching as the wild horse demonstrated the incredible instincts that had helped her species survive in these harsh lands for generations. The mare backed up a few steps, then moved forward with purpose, choosing her path carefully before making a powerful leap across the gap. She landed surely on the other side, immediately turning to encourage her foal. The young horse, however, stood trembling at the edge, clearly terrified by the drop below. Emely knew this was a crucial moment. If the foal panicked now, there would be no way to safely control its reaction on the narrow trail. She guided Thunder as close as she dared to the young horse, using her presence to block its view of the drop while speaking in low, encouraging tones. The mare called again, and this time the foal responded. With the desperate energy of youth and fear combined, it gathered itself and jumped. For a heart-stopping moment, Emely thought it wouldn't make it. Its front hooves caught the edge of the trail, sending a shower of loose rock into the abyss below. But then its natural athleticism took over, and with a scrambling effort, it pulled itself up beside its mother. Now, it was their turn. Emely patted Thunder's neck, feeling the tremors running through his powerful muscles. "We can do this, boy," she murmured, gathering the reins. "Just like we've practiced." They'd done similar jumps during training, but never in conditions like these. Thunder seemed to gather himself, his ears pricked forward as he gauged the distance. Emely gave him his head, trusting in his judgment. The quarter horse backed up a few steps, then surged forward with powerful strides. His leap was perfect, clearing the gap with room to spare and landing solidly on the other side. They continued upward, the trail becoming slightly wider, but no less treacherous. The rain had begun to ease slightly, but the rock face still streamed with water, making every step a calculated risk. Emely could hear the helicopter more clearly now, its sound echoing off the canyon walls. A flash of lightning illuminated the plateau above them. They were close to the top. The mare and foal had picked up their pace, driven by some instinct that told them safety lay just ahead. Emely allowed Thunder to follow their lead, knowing that sometimes the best thing a rider could do was trust their horse's judgment. The final stretch of trail was the steepest yet, forcing them to move almost sideways across the face of the canyon. Emely leaned forward in the saddle, helping Thunder maintain his balance as they carefully picked their way upward. The mare and foal were already at the top, their silhouettes visible against the stormy sky. With a final surge of effort, Thunder carried them onto the plateau. Emely immediately dismounted, her legs shaking from cold and tension. The vast expanse of relatively flat ground was a welcome sight after the narrow confines of the canyon trail. They were well above the flood now, though they could still hear its roar echoing up from below. The helicopter was visible now, its searchlight cutting through the rain as it approached their position. Emely pulled out a small emergency flare from her saddlebag, waiting for the aircraft to get closer before setting it off. The bright red light would guide them directly to their location. The mare and foal stood together a short distance away, the young horse pressed against its mother's side as they shared warmth and comfort. Despite their exhaustion, both animals remained alert, their ears swiveling to track the approaching helicopter. Emely was amazed by their composure. Wild horses often spooked at the sound of aircraft, but these two seemed to sense that help was arriving. Thunder moved closer to Emely, seeking reassurance as the helicopter drew near. She stroked his neck, noticing how he was still trembling from the effort of their climb. "You did good, boy," she told him, her voice barely audible over the growing roar of the rotors. "You did real good." The helicopter circled once before beginning its descent, the downdraft creating sheets of spray from the rain-soaked ground. Emely kept a firm grip on Thunder's reins while keeping an eye on the mare and foal. To her relief, neither showed signs of bolting, perhaps too exhausted to do more than stand their ground against this new challenge. As the aircraft touched down, Emely caught sight of familiar figures emerging from the cabin. Her father was among them, and the relief on his face was visible even through the rain. The rescue team moved quickly, spreading out to secure the area and assess the situation. John Martinez reached his daughter first, pulling her into a tight embrace despite their wet clothes. "When we lost radio contact," he began, his voice rough with emotion. Emely hugged him back, understanding the fear he must have felt. In their line of work, silence often meant trouble. The team's veterinarian was already moving toward the mare and foal, her movements slow and careful to avoid spooking the wild horses. The mare watched warily but didn't move away, seeming to understand that these humans meant no harm. Her foal stayed close, exhaustion finally overtaking its fear. "They're going to need transport," Emely told her father, gesturing toward the wild horses. "The foal's weak and they've both been through hell." She quickly recounted the events of the rescue, watching as her father's expression shifted from concern to pride. The wind began to calm as the rescue team worked efficiently around the plateau. Dr. Emely Chen, the sanctuary's lead veterinarian, had managed to approach the mare and foal, her experienced hands moving with gentle precision as she conducted an initial examination. The mare remained surprisingly calm, as if sensing that these humans were trying to help her exhausted baby. "Dehydrated but stable," Dr. Chen called out over her shoulder, her hands running carefully over the foal's trembling legs. "No serious injuries that I can see, but we'll need to get them both back to the sanctuary for a proper checkup." She paused, noting something interesting about the mare. "Emely, come look at this." Emely moved closer, her eyes following Dr. Chen's gesture toward a small white marking on the mare's left shoulder. Through the mud and rain, she could just make out what looked like a faded brand. "She's one of ours," Emely realized. Recognition dawning. "From the release program 2 years ago. I remember her. We called her Sierra." The discovery added another layer to the story. Sierra had been part of a group of rehabilitated Mustangs released back into the wild, a program the Sanctuary had started to help maintain healthy bloodlines in the local herds. The fact that she'd allowed them to approach so readily suddenly made more sense. She had positive associations with humans from her time at the Sanctuary. The helicopter crew had begun setting up portable floodlights, illuminating the plateau. As the storm clouds continued to darken the afternoon sky, the rain had settled into a steady drizzle, and below them they could still hear the rush of floodwaters through the canyon. Radio chatter indicated that other rescue teams were monitoring the water levels, reporting that the worst of the surge had passed. "We need to move them soon," John Martinez said, joining Emely and Dr. Chen. "Weather report shows another cell moving in within the hour." He gestured toward the transport trailer that was being carefully backed up the access road on the far side of the plateau, a road Emely hadn't even known existed in her rush to reach the stranded horses. Dr. Chen nodded, already reaching for her medical kit. "I'm going to give them both a mild sedative for transport. The foal's exhausted, but stress could still make him dangerous to move." She prepared 2 syringes with practiced efficiency, her movements calm and deliberate. Emely stayed close to Sierra as Dr. Chen administered the sedatives, speaking softly to both mare and foal. The young horse had begun shivering more violently, its earlier adrenaline fading as fatigue took over. Sierra remained attentive to her baby, occasionally nuzzling it and shifting to block the wind. The Sanctuary's transport team worked quickly to set up a safe loading area using portable panels to create a small chute leading to the trailer. They'd done this countless times before, but each rescue was unique, requiring careful attention to the specific needs of the animals involved. As they waited for the sedatives to take effect, Emely found herself studying the foal more closely. Despite its exhaustion and obvious weight loss, she could see signs of good breeding in its conformation. It had Sierra's refined head and strong legs, promising to grow into a fine example of its breed. "He's going to need a name," Dr. Chen remarked, noting Emily's thoughtful expression. She was monitoring both horses' reactions to the sedative, making sure they remained calm but alert enough to walk to the trailer. Emely watched as the foal leaned against its mother, its eyes growing heavy. "Maverick," she said after a moment, "because he survived against all odds out here." The name seemed to fit the young horse who had managed to stay alive alone in some of Nevada's most challenging terrain. The sedatives had begun to take full effect, making both horses docile but still able to walk. With careful coordination between the team members, they began the delicate process of loading Sierra and Maverick into the transport trailer. Emely led the way, while other team members walked alongside, ready to provide support if needed. Sierra loaded first, her previous training evident in the way she calmly walked up the ramp despite her sedated state. Maverick followed his mother, without hesitation, his exhaustion making him compliant. The team quickly secured the divider, ensuring both horses would have enough room to balance during the drive back to the sanctuary. As the last of the equipment was being packed up, Emely took a moment to check on Thunder, her faithful quarter. Horse had been quietly waiting with the other rescue team members, but she could see the day's events had taken their toll on him as well. "Let's get you home too, boy," she said softly, running her hand along his neck. The drive back to the sanctuary would take over an hour, following the winding mountain roads that connected this remote area to the main valley. Emely opted to ride in the transport trailer, wanting to keep an eye on Sierra and Maverick during the journey. Dr. Chen joined her, medical kit ready in case either horse showed signs of distress. As they began the careful descent from the plateau, Emely found herself reflecting on the events that had led to this moment. What had started as a routine search had turned into one of the most challenging rescues of her career. The bond between Sierra and Maverick had not only kept them both alive, but had also led to their eventual rescue. The transport trailer swayed gently as it navigated the mountain roads, its precious cargo standing quietly in the soft interior. Lighting, Maverick had fallen into an exhausted sleep, his small frame pressed against his mother's side. Sierra remained alert despite the sedative, her maternal instincts still strong even in her drowsy state. Through the trailer's small windows, Emely could see the storm moving off to the east, leaving behind a landscape washed clean by the rain. The late afternoon sun occasionally broke through the clouds, creating brilliant rainbows that arched over the desert valleys below. It was nature's reminder of hope after chaos, a fitting end to their dramatic day. The radio crackled with updates. From the sanctuary, the staff was preparing the medical barn for their arrival, setting up a private stall with extra bedding and monitoring equipment. They would need to watch both horses carefully over the next few days, especially Maverick, who would require special care to regain his strength. Dr. Chen broke the comfortable silence in the trailer. "You know, it's remarkable they both survived out there. 2 weeks is a long time for a foal this young to be separated from the herd." She was making notes in her medical log, documenting their initial observations. Emely nodded, thinking about the challenges they must have faced. Sierra never gave up looking for him. Even when we first spotted her, she was still actively searching. The dedication of the mare had been impressive, defying the usual Mustang instinct to stay with the main herd. The trailer began to descend into the main valley, where the wild horse sanctuary spread out across several thousand acres of protected land. The facility was a testament to the Martinez family's dedication to preserving these magnificent animals, combining modern veterinary care with programs designed to protect and study wild horse populations. As they approached the sanctuary's main gates, Emely could see the medical team already assembled, waiting to receive their newest patients. The sanctuary had earned a reputation for successful rehabilitation and release of wild horses, but cases like this were special. The bond between Sierra and Maverick would need to be protected and nurtured during their recovery. The transport trailer came to a gentle stop outside the medical barn, and the team sprang into action with practiced efficiency. Sierra and Maverick would be moved to their prepared stall, where they could begin their recovery in peace and comfort. But as Emely watched the careful unloading process, she knew this was just the beginning of their story. Both horses would need time to regain their strength, and decisions would need to be made about their future. Would they be candidates for release back into the wild, or would Sierra's previous experience with humans suggest a different path? These were questions for another day. For now, the priority was getting them settled and beginning their rehabilitation. The sanctuary's night staff was arriving for their shift as Emely finally led Thunder back to his stall. The quarter horse had more than earned his rest, and she took extra time grooming him, making sure he was comfortable after their challenging day. Through the barn's open door, she could hear the gentle nickering of Sierra and Maverick as they settled into their temporary home. The medical barn hummed with quiet activity as the night team began their first set of observations. Emely had changed into dry clothes, but couldn't bring herself to leave just yet. She stood at the entrance of Sierra and Maverick's stall, watching as Dr. Chen completed her thorough examination of both horses under the warm barn lights. Maverick had fallen into a deep sleep almost immediately after being settled into the deeply bedded stall, his small body finally surrendering to complete exhaustion. Sierra stood protectively over her foal, but her posture was relaxed, her previous experience at the sanctuary evident in her calm acceptance of the human activity around her. "His vital signs are stabilizing," Dr. Chen reported softly, making notes on her tablet. "Temperature's still a bit low, but that's to be expected after exposure to those conditions. The warming blanket should help." She gestured to the therapeutic blanket they'd carefully draped over the sleeping foal, its battery-powered heating elements providing gentle, consistent warmth. Emely nodded, her eyes fixed on Maverick's rhythmic breathing. "What about dehydration? He was out there for nearly 2 weeks." The young horse's ribs were clearly visible beneath his coat, telling the story of his time alone in the wilderness. Dr. Chen moved to check the IV line they'd managed to place shortly after arrival. "We've started him on fluids and electrolytes. Sierra's dehydrated too, but not as severely. She must have found water sources during her search." The veterinarian's voice held a note of admiration for the mare's survival skills. The sanctuary's night manager, Mike Torres, appeared at Emely's shoulder with a steaming cup of coffee. "Thought you could use this," he said quietly, handing it to her. "Your father's finishing up the incident reports. Says you should head home and get some rest." Emely accepted the coffee gratefully, but made no move to leave. "I want to be here. When Maverick wakes up, the first few hours are crucial." She'd seen enough rehabilitations to know that how an animal responded to their first night in captivity often set the tone for their entire recovery. Mike didn't argue, understanding her dedication. Instead, he updated her on the sanctuary's other activities. The storm had caused minor damage to some of the outer fencing, but nothing serious. The resident horses were all secure, and the maintenance team was already working on repairs. A soft nicker from Sierra drew their attention back to the stall. The mare had moved to the water trough, drinking deeply. It was a good sign, showing trust in their care and a willingness to take care of her own needs even in strange surroundings. "She remembers this place," Emely mused, watching Sierra's comfortable movements around the stall. 2 years ago, she was in the rehabilitation program for 3 months before being released back to the wild. She was younger then, but just as calm and intelligent. Dr. Chen finished her notes and joined them at the stall entrance. That previous experience might be crucial to their rehabilitation. Sierra's positive associations with humans could help. Maverick adjust more quickly. She paused, considering something, though it raises interesting questions about their future. Emely understood what she meant. Usually, the sanctuary's goal was to rehabilitate and release wild horses back to their natural habitat. But cases involving previously rehabilitated horses sometimes took different paths, especially when the animals showed exceptional ability to bridge the gap between wild and domestic life. The night deepened around the sanctuary, bringing with it a peaceful quiet, broken only by the occasional soft sounds of horses settling in for sleep. The medical barn remained illuminated, its warm lights creating a protective cocoon around its recovering patients. Around midnight, Maverick began to stir. Emely, who had been dozing in a chair near the stall, was immediately alert. The foal's movements were sluggish at first, his small body still heavy with exhaustion and the lingering effects of the sedative. Sierra was at her baby's side instantly, gently nuzzling him as he struggled to his feet. The foal's legs trembled with the effort, but he managed to stand, immediately seeking his mother's milk. It was another positive sign. His survival instincts were strong despite his ordeal. Dr. Chen appeared silently beside Emely, her experienced eyes assessing every aspect of the foal's behavior. "Good nursing reflex," she murmured, making notes, "and Sierra's letting down milk well. We'll still need to supplement his nutrition, but this is an excellent start." They watched as Maverick nursed, his tail swishing weakly with contentment. Despite his obvious hunger, his nursing was controlled and steady, another sign of his inherent good sense. Many rescued foals had to be taught proper nursing behavior, but Maverick seemed to have maintained his early learning despite his time alone. As the night progressed, Emely noticed subtle changes in both horses. Sierra became more interactive with the humans around her, occasionally approaching the stall door to investigate activities in the barn. Maverick, while still staying close to his mother, showed increasing interest in his surroundings, his ears pricking forward at new sounds. The sanctuary's night routine continued around them. Every hour, a staff member would quietly check vitals and make notes. The IV fluids were monitored and adjusted as needed. Fresh water was provided, and Sierra's feed was carefully measured to help her produce the milk her growing foal needed. Dawn was approaching when Emely finally agreed to head home for a few hours of rest. She had work to do later, reports to file, decisions to make about Sierra and Maverick's rehabilitation program, and regular sanctuary duties to attend to. But as she took one last look at the pair in their stall, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Maverick had defied the odds, surviving alone in some of Nevada's most challenging terrain. Sierra had never given up searching for her baby, her maternal instincts overriding even the strong herd bonds that usually governed Mustang behavior. Together, they represented everything the sanctuary stood for: the resilience of these magnificent animals and the importance of preserving their freedom while providing help when needed. The drive home took Emely past the sanctuary's main pastures, where the first light of dawn was beginning to illuminate the shapes of grazing horses. Some were permanent residents, too injured or habituated to humans to be safely released. Others were in various stages of rehabilitation, learning to trust while maintaining their wild spirit. As she turned onto the road leading to her small ranch house, Emely's thoughts returned to Sierra and Maverick. Their story was far from over. The coming weeks would bring challenges as Maverick regained his strength and Sierra adjusted to their temporary captivity. Decisions would need to be made about their future, whether to attempt another release or consider other options that might better suit their unique situation. The morning sun was just breaking over the eastern mountains as Emely pulled into her driveway. The storm had cleared completely, leaving behind a landscape washed clean and bright. In the distance, she could see the rugged outline of the Devil's Fingers, where their dramatic rescue had played out. Inside her house, Emily took a moment to look at the photographs hanging on her walls. Images of successful rehabilitations and releases, each telling a story of survival and hope. Soon, she knew, pictures of Sierra and Maverick would join them, adding another chapter to the sanctuary's ongoing mission to protect and preserve these remarkable animals. As she finally lay down to rest, Emily could still hear the echo of Sierra's desperate calls for her foal, the sound of Maverick's weak nicker when he recognized his mother, and the powerful message their reunion sent about the strength of family bonds in the wild. Whatever the future held for them, their story would serve as a reminder of the incredible resilience of wild horses and the importance of protecting their right to run free. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and decisions, but for now, Emily could rest knowing that mother and foal were safe together and on the path to recovery. In the quiet of her bedroom, she smiled, remembering the moment when Maverick had first seen his mother after their long separation. Some things, she realized, were universal. The love between parent and child, the will to survive, and the power of never giving up hope. After a few hours of rest, Emily returned to the sanctuary, her mind already focused on the challenges ahead. The medical barn was quiet in the late morning sun, the atmosphere calm and purposeful as staff members went about their duties. Dr. Chen was already there, reviewing overnight observations and preparing treatment plans. Maverick was awake and alert, standing close to Sierra but showing more interest in his surroundings. The foal's eyes were brighter, and though still weak, his movements were steadier than the night before. Sierra remained calm and attentive, dividing her attention between her baby and the humans moving around their stall. He took the first round of supplements well, Dr. Chen reported, showing Emily the morning's charts. And his blood work is showing improvement. The IV fluids have helped significantly. She pointed to several markers that indicated positive changes in the foal's condition. Emily watched as one of the veterinary technicians entered the stall to check Maverick's IV line. The young horse showed no fear, merely turning his head to observe the procedure with quiet interest. Sierra's previous experience with the sanctuary was proving invaluable. Her calm acceptance of human handling was clearly influencing her. A foal's behavior. We need to start planning their rehabilitation program, Emily said, leaning against the stall door. Usually we'd minimize human contact to preserve their wild instincts, but this case is different. She was thinking about Sierra's unique history with the sanctuary and how it might affect their approach. Dr. Chen nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. Sierra's already habituated to humans to some degree, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It might actually give us more options for their future. She paused, watching as Maverick tentatively approached the fresh hay that had been placed in their stall. The sanctuary's rehabilitation program typically followed a strict protocol designed to maintain the horse's wild nature while providing necessary medical care. But cases involving previously rehabilitated horses often required a different approach, balancing the benefits of human interaction with the desire to preserve natural behaviors. Emily's father joined them, carrying a thick folder of documents. "I've been reviewing Sierra's previous records," he said, opening the file. During her first stay with us, she showed remarkable adaptability. Her release assessment noted her as an excellent candidate for the wilderness program, but also mentioned her unusual comfort level with human presence. The implications were clear. Sierra's unique characteristics had been passed down to Maverick, evident in the foal's quick adjustment to captivity. This genetic disposition, combined with their extraordinary circumstances, might require a specialized rehabilitation plan. "We should document everything," Emely suggested, her mind already working through the possibilities. Their case could provide valuable insights for future rehabilitation programs, especially involving separated mothers and foals. She pulled out her tablet, beginning to outline a detailed observation schedule. The day progressed with a steady stream of medical checks and careful monitoring. Maverick's strength continued to improve, and by afternoon, he was showing interest in the small selection of feeds provided alongside his mother's milk. Sierra maintained her calm demeanor, though her protective instincts remained evident in the way she positioned herself between her foal and any newcomers to their stall. Emely spent time simply observing them, noting the subtle interactions between mother and foal. Despite their 2-week separation, their bond was incredibly strong. Maverick stayed attuned to his mother's every movement, while Sierra seemed to anticipate her foal's needs before he expressed them. As evening approached, Dr. Chen conducted another thorough examination of both horses. "Maverick's temperature has stabilized," she reported, "and his hydration levels are much better. We can probably remove the IV tomorrow if he continues to improve at this rate." The news was encouraging, but Emely knew they were still in the early stages of recovery. Physical healing was just the first step. The real challenge would be determining the best path forward for this unique pair. Their experiences had changed them both, creating a situation that didn't fit neatly into the sanctuary's usual rehabilitation categories. Later that evening, Emely sat in her office, reviewing files of similar cases from other wild horse sanctuaries across the country. She was looking for precedents, examples of how other facilities had handled complicated rehabilitation situations. The search yielded interesting insights, but nothing quite matched Sierra and Maverick's particular circumstances. Through her office window, she could see the sanctuary's main pastures, where several groups of rehabilitating horses grazed peacefully. Each group represented different stages of the program, from recently rescued animals still adjusting to human presence to those nearly ready for release back into the wild. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention to a small band of horses moving across the nearest pasture. Their movements were synchronized, displaying the natural herd dynamics that the sanctuary worked so hard to preserve. It was a reminder of what they were ultimately working toward, helping these magnificent animals maintain their wild heritage, while protecting them from the increasing pressures of human expansion. Emely returned to the medical barn for one final check before heading home. The night team was already on duty, quietly going about their rounds. Maverick was sleeping again, his small body tucked against Sierra's side. The mare lifted her head as Emely approached, nickering softly in recognition. "You're something special. You know that?" Emely spoke quietly to Sierra, admiring the mare's quiet strength and intelligence. The horse's dark eyes seemed to hold understanding beyond mere animal instinct, a depth of awareness that had helped her survive and find her foal against tremendous odds. The next few weeks would be crucial in determining Sierra and Maverick's future. They would need to carefully evaluate both horses' responses to different levels of human interaction. assess their ability to reintegrate with other horses, and monitor their physical and behavioral recovery. Emely made a few final notes on their chart before leaving for the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and decisions, but for now, mother and foal were safe, healing, and together. Their story had already touched many hearts at the sanctuary, and Emely suspected it would continue to influence their understanding of wild horse behavior and rehabilitation. As she drove home under the star-filled Nevada sky, Emely reflected on the extraordinary series of events that had brought Sierra and Maverick to the sanctuary. Their rescue had been dramatic, but the real story was in their survival, the unwavering bond between mother and foal that had given them both the strength to endure until help arrived. The lights of her ranch house appeared in the distance, a welcoming beacon after another long day. Tomorrow would bring more developments in Sierra and Maverick's rehabilitation, more decisions to make, and more lessons to learn from these remarkable survivors. But tonight, Emely could rest, knowing that their story, whatever path it ultimately took, would help shape the future of wild horse conservation. In her years of working with wild horses, Emely had seen countless examples of their resilience and intelligence. But Sierra and Maverick's case was special, offering unique insights into the complex relationships between wild horses and the humans dedicated to protecting them. Their journey was far from over, but it had already begun to change the way the sanctuary approached certain aspects of rehabilitation and release planning. The next few weeks brought steady progress in Sierra and Maverick's recovery. The medical barn had become their temporary home, a safe haven where both horses continued to surprise and impress the sanctuary's staff with their remarkable adaptability. Maverick's transformation was particularly striking. The once weak foal now moved with growing confidence, his coat regaining its natural shine under proper care and nutrition. Dr. Chen had removed the IV line after the third day, pleased with Maverick's improving strength and appetite. The foal's blood work showed consistent improvement, and his weight was steadily increasing thanks to a carefully managed diet of mother's milk, supplemented with specialized foal nutrition. Emely spent every morning observing their behavior, documenting the subtle changes that marked their progress. She'd noticed something fascinating about their interactions with humans. While most wild horses maintained a cautious distance even after weeks in captivity, Sierra and Maverick showed a unique balance of trust and natural wariness. "They're rewriting our expectations," Dr. Chen remarked one morning, watching as Maverick cautiously investigated a new enrichment toy they'd placed in the stall. Most foals his age who've been through trauma show much more anxiety around human activity. The sanctuary's rehabilitation team had begun implementing a specialized program designed to take advantage of Sierra's unusual comfort with human presence, while still preserving essential wild behaviors. It was a delicate balance, requiring constant assessment and adjustment. Emely's father had become particularly invested in their case, often spending hours reviewing their progress and consulting with experts from other facilities. "We need to consider all options for their future," he'd said during a recent staff meeting. "Their unique circumstances might call for an approach we haven't tried before." The sanctuary's main paddocks were visible from Sierra and Maverick's stall, and Emely had noticed both horses showing increasing interest in the other resident horses. It was time to consider the next phase of their rehabilitation. Carefully, controlled socialization with other rescued Mustangs, "I think they're ready for limited turnout," Emely suggested during the morning rounds. The small paddock next to the medical barn would be perfect, secure, but with visual access to the main herd. She'd been watching Sierra's body language carefully, noting the mare's growing restlessness in the confined space of their stall. Dr. Chen agreed, and they began preparing for this important transition. The paddock was carefully inspected and prepared, with special attention paid to the footing to ensure it was safe for Maverick's still developing legs. They chose a quiet morning for the first turnout, when the sanctuary's routine activities would be minimal. Emely stood at the paddock gate, holding it open as Sierra led Maverick into their new space. The mare moved cautiously at first, stopping frequently to survey their surroundings while her foal stayed close to her side. But as the minutes passed, both horses began to relax, exploring their expanded territory with growing confidence. Watching them move freely in the morning sunlight, Emely could see how much Maverick had developed. His legs were stronger now, supporting his growing frame as he experimented with short bursts of speed. Sierra kept a watchful eye on her foal, but allowed him more independence, a sign of her growing confidence in their safety, hence comfortable and assured in the familiar space. The other horses in nearby paddocks showed interest in the newcomers, approaching their shared fence lines with curious nickering. Sierra responded calmly, exchanging greeting gestures while maintaining a protective position near Maverick. The foal, emboldened by his mother's confidence, began showing interest in the other horses as well. "Look at that social development," Dr. Chen noted, joining Emely at the fence. "He's displaying completely normal interaction patterns for a foal his age. You'd never know he spent 2 weeks isolated in the wild." She was documenting every aspect of their behavior, building a valuable case study for future rehabilitation efforts. The sanctuary's regular activities continued around them, staff members moving about their daily tasks, volunteers working in nearby paddocks, and the constant movement of horses being turned out or brought in for care. Sierra and Maverick remained calm through it all, adjusting to the increased activity with remarkable ease. By afternoon, both horses had settled into a comfortable routine in their new space. Maverick alternated between nursing, resting, and exploring, while Sierra grazed contentedly, always keeping her foal within sight. The transformation from their desperate state during the rescue to this peaceful scene was remarkable. Emely used this quiet moment to update their rehabilitation plan. The next phase would involve gradually introducing them to other horses in controlled settings, starting with calm, experienced sanctuary residents who could help ease their transition back into herd life. The sanctuary's head trainer, Miguel Ramirez, joined Emely as she made her notes. He'd been observing Sierra and Maverick throughout the day, his decades of experience giving him unique insight into their behavior. "Sierra remembers her training from before," he commented. "Watch how she positions herself at the fence. She's comfortable with boundaries, understands gaits. These aren't typical wild horse behaviors." This observation added another layer to their complex situation. Sierra's previous time at the sanctuary had clearly left her with lasting impressions, knowledge that she was now passing on to her foal. It raised interesting questions about the long-term effects of rehabilitation programs on wild horse behavior. As the day progressed, small groups of visitors toured the sanctuary, always keeping a respectful distance from the rehabilitation areas. Sierra and Maverick's story had begun spreading through the wild horse conservation community, drawing attention to the sanctuary's work and the broader issues facing wild Mustangs in the American West. Emely found herself explaining their case to a group of visiting veterinary students, using it to illustrate the complexities of wild horse rehabilitation. "Every case is unique," she told them, "but Sierra and Maverick are teaching us new things about the capabilities of these animals to adapt and overcome trauma." The afternoon brought a new development as a small band of sanctuary residents was turned out in the adjacent paddock. Sierra and Maverick's reactions would provide valuable insights into their readiness for expanded socialization. The mare's behavior remained calm and confident, while Maverick showed healthy curiosity tempered with appropriate caution. "This is exactly what we want to see," Dr. Chen remarked, observing the interactions. "They're maintaining their wild instincts while demonstrating remarkable adaptability to captive conditions." She made detailed notes about their responses to various stimuli, building a comprehensive picture of their psychological recovery. As evening approached, Emely supervised their return to the medical barn for the night. The transition was smooth, both horses entering their stall willingly, another sign of their extraordinary adjustment to sanctuary routines. Sierra immediately guided Maverick to the fresh hay waiting for them, their move-em. The day's success marked a significant milestone in their rehabilitation, opening new possibilities for their future. While traditional sanctuary protocol aimed for eventual release back to the wild, Sierra and Maverick's unique circumstances and behaviors suggested they might be candidates for alternative programs. 2 months into their rehabilitation, Sierra and Maverick's progress had exceeded all expectations. The medical barn had become just a nightly resting place, with their days spent in increasingly larger paddocks interacting with other horses. The transformation in both animals was remarkable, especially in Maverick, who had grown into a spirited and curious young horse. Emely stood at the fence of their current enclosure, watching as Maverick practiced his newfound running skills. The foal had developed a distinctive way of moving, combining his natural Mustang grace with playful energy that drew smiles from everyone who observed him. Sierra grazed nearby, still attentive, but now comfortable enough to let her youngster explore several yards away. "Their case study is generating quite a bit of interest," Dr. Chen said, joining Emely at the fence. She held a tablet displaying emails from various wildlife conservation organizations. "Several facilities want to know more about our rehabilitation approach, especially given Sierra's unique history with the sanctuary." The success of their recovery had indeed provided valuable insights into wild horse rehabilitation. Sierra's previous experience with the sanctuary had created an unexpected advantage, allowing for faster trust building and more effective medical treatment. This discovery was prompting discussions about long-term tracking of released horses and the potential benefits of maintained familiarity with human caregivers. "The board wants to discuss their future," Emely's father announced during that morning's staff meeting. "Their situation presents some interesting possibilities we haven't considered before." He spread out several documents detailing different program options, from traditional release protocols to more innovative approaches. The sanctuary's traditional mission had always been to rehabilitate and release wild horses back to their natural habitat. However, Sierra and Maverick's case had sparked discussions about creating a new program, one that would utilize the unique abilities of previously rehabilitated horses to help in future rescue operations. Emely had been developing this idea, since noticing how Sierra's calm presence affected other rescued horses. The mare's unusual combination of wild instincts and comfort with humans made her a perfect candidate for what Emely was beginning to call the bridge program, using rehabilitated horses as intermediaries between newly rescued Mustangs and human caregivers. Later that afternoon, Emely observed a perfect example of this potential as a newly rescued mare was placed in the adjacent paddock. The new arrival was typically anxious and defensive, but something about Sierra's calm demeanor seemed to reassure her. Within hours, the new mare had begun mimicking Sierra's relaxed attitude toward the sanctuary staff. "It's like she's teaching them it's safe here," Miguel remarked, watching the interaction. His years of experience with wild horses made him particularly attuned to these subtle behavioral changes. "I've never seen anything quite like it." Maverick, too, was showing signs of this special capability. Despite his young age, he approached new arrivals with a curious confidence that often helped ease their anxiety. His playful nature seemed to remind other horses of the safety and comfort available at the sanctuary. The day's routine continued around them. Volunteers mucking stalls, veterinary staff conducting checkups, and the constant movement of horses between paddocks and treatment areas. Sierra and Maverick remained calm through it all, their behavior providing a steady example for more recently arrived residents. Emely spent the afternoon documenting these interactions, building a case for the new program she envisioned. Each observation added weight to her theory that horses like Sierra could play a crucial role in improving rehabilitation success rates and reducing the stress of transition for newly rescued animals. "We need to think about their training schedule," Miguel suggested, reviewing Emely's notes. "If we're going to develop this program, they'll need specific skills." He began outlining a gentle training plan that would build on Sierra's natural abilities while maintaining her essential wild character. The sanctuary's main paddocks were alive with activity as the afternoon sun began to lower. Several groups of horses moved about their enclosures, displaying the natural herd dynamics that were so crucial to their eventual return to the wild. Sierra and Maverick watched this activity with interest, but showed no signs of the anxiety typical in wild horses. Dr. Chen had been monitoring their health closely throughout the rehabilitation process, and her latest reports were overwhelmingly positive. "Maverick's development is right on track," she noted, showing Emely his growth charts. "And Sierra's maternal behavior continues to be exemplary, even with the increased human interaction." The success of their rehabilitation had attracted attention from other wild horse advocacy groups. The sanctuary had begun receiving requests for information about their methods, particularly regarding the handling of separated mothers and foals. Sierra and Maverick's story was becoming a valuable teaching tool for the wider conservation community. Emely's father called a special meeting to discuss the preliminary plans for the bridge program. The conference room was filled with staff members and consultants, all eager to contribute to this innovative approach to wild horse rehabilitation. Sierra and Maverick's case was presented as the cornerstone example, their journey from desperate rescue to potential program pioneers, capturing everyone's attention. "We need to be careful about how we proceed," John Martinez cautioned during the meeting. "This program could revolutionize our rehabilitation methods, but we must ensure we're not compromising the wild nature of these horses." His concerns reflected the delicate balance they would need to maintain. The discussion continued well into the evening, with various experts offering insights and suggestions. The program would require careful documentation, specialized training protocols, and ongoing assessment of both the helper horses and the new arrivals they would be assisting. As the meeting concluded, Emely returned to Sierra and Maverick's paddock for a final check before nightfall. The pair had settled into their evening routine, with Maverick nursing while Sierra kept a watchful eye on their surroundings. The scene was peaceful, a far cry from their desperate situation just months ago. The sanctuary's lights were coming on as dusk approached, casting a warm glow over the facility. Emely could hear the distant sounds of the evening feed being distributed, the familiar routine bringing comfort to horses and humans alike. In their paddock, Sierra and Maverick remained calm, now fully accustomed to the rhythm of sanctuary life. Looking at them, Emely felt a surge of pride and purpose. Their story had not only touched hearts, but was now shaping the future of wild horse rehabilitation. The Bridge program, born from their unique circumstances, held the potential to help countless other Mustangs make the difficult transition from wild freedom to necessary human care. The evening air carried the scent of sage and desert flowers, reminding Emely of the vast wilderness where Sierra and Maverick's journey had begun. While their future would be different from what was initially planned, their new role could help preserve the freedom of other wild horses by easing the rehabilitation process and increasing successful release rates. As stars began appearing in the darkening sky, Emely made her final notes of the day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities as they continued developing the Bridge program. Sierra and Maverick had already taught them so much about resilience, adaptation, and the unexpected ways that wild horses could help humans, help their own kind. The transition from summer to fall brought new energy to the wild horse sanctuary. Sierra and Maverick's progress had become the foundation for the newly established Bridge program, their success story inspiring a fresh approach to wild horse rehabilitation. The crisp morning air carried the promise of change as Emely reviewed the latest documentation of their achievements. 6 months had passed since the dramatic rescue in Devil's Fingers, and the transformation in both horses was remarkable. Maverick had grown into a strong young colt, his dark coat gleaming with health as he practiced his running skills in the training paddock. Sierra watched from nearby, her maternal instincts now perfectly balanced with her role as a mentor to newly arrived horses. "We've had 3 successful introductions this week alone," Dr. Chen reported during the morning staff meeting. She displayed video footage showing Sierra calmly demonstrating proper behavior around feeding stations to a group of recently rescued Mustangs. The reduction in stress levels among new arrivals is significant when they're placed near Sierra and Maverick. The Bridge program had evolved from concept to reality, with Sierra as its first official participant. Her natural ability to communicate safety and trust to other wild horses had proven invaluable in reducing the adjustment period for new rescues. Maverick, too, played his part, his playful nature often drawing shy foals out of their shells. Emely's father stood at the head of the conference table, pride evident in his expression as he reviewed the program's initial results. "The data speaks for itself," he announced, sharing charts that showed decreased rehabilitation times and improved success rates. "What we're learning from Sierra and Maverick is changing our entire approach to wild horse conservation." The sanctuary's daily routine had adapted to incorporate the new program. Sierra and Maverick now had access to a specially designed series of paddocks that allowed controlled interaction with new arrivals while maintaining safe boundaries. The setup provided opportunities for natural horse-to-horse communication while protecting both the mentor horses and the newcomers. Miguel had developed a gentle training protocol that built on Sierra's natural abilities without diminishing her wild spirit. "It's about enhancement, not domestication," he explained to a group of visiting veterinary students. "We're working with their instincts, not against them." The results were evident in the way Sierra moved confidently between her roles as mother, mentor, and wild horse. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sanctuary as Emely observed a training session. Sierra stood at the fence line of the introduction paddock, her presence having a visible calming effect on a newly arrived group of Mustangs. The new horses, initially nervous and defensive, gradually began mimicking her relaxed posture and curious approaches to human activity. Maverick's role had evolved as well. The once vulnerable foal now displayed an almost magnetic personality, particularly with other young horses. "He's like a social bridge," Dr. Chen noted, watching him initiate play with the recently rescued colt. "His confidence seems to be contagious." The sanctuary's reputation had grown alongside the success of the bridge program. Conservation groups from across the country sent representatives to observe and learn from their methods. Sierra and Maverick's story became a powerful testament to the potential for innovation in wild horse rehabilitation. Emely spent countless hours documenting every aspect of the program's development. Her detailed observations would serve as a guide for other facilities looking to implement similar approaches. "The key is understanding that every horse has unique potential," she explained during a workshop. Sierra and Maverick showed us that sometimes our greatest teachers come from unexpected circumstances. The changes in both horses continued to amaze everyone who had witnessed their journey. Sierra's natural leadership abilities had flourished in her role as a mentor, while still maintaining the wild instincts that made her such an effective bridge between worlds. Maverick had grown into his own unique position, combining the best aspects of both wild and sanctuary life. As autumn progressed, the sanctuary prepared for its annual review of release candidates. Traditionally, this would have been the time to evaluate Sierra and Maverick's readiness to return to the wild. Instead, their file contained a different kind of assessment, one that recognized their exceptional value to the rehabilitation program. "They found their purpose here," John Martinez remarked during the review meeting. "Sometimes the best way to preserve wildness is to create new paths for understanding it." The decision to make Sierra and Maverick permanent residents of the sanctuary was unanimous, acknowledging their crucial role in helping other wild horses transition successfully. The bridge program continued to evolve, with new protocols being developed based on observations of Sierra's interactions with other horses. Her ability to maintain her wild nature while accepting certain aspects of sanctuary life provided valuable insights into the complexity of wild horse behavior and adaptation. Emely often found herself reflecting on the dramatic events that had brought Sierra and Maverick to this point. Their story had begun with desperate circumstances, a lost foal, a searching mother, and a dangerous rescue in treacherous terrain. Yet those challenges had led to discoveries that were now benefiting countless other wild horses. The sanctuary's education center had created a special exhibit dedicated to their story, using it to illustrate the importance of innovative approaches in wildlife conservation. Visitors were consistently moved by the tale of maternal dedication and survival that had evolved into a groundbreaking rehabilitation program. As winter approached, the sanctuary buzzed with activity, preparing for the colder months ahead. Sierra and Maverick had been moved to their cold weather paddock, which offered protection from harsh weather while maintaining their important connection to other horses in the rehabilitation program. The success of their story had ripple effects throughout the wild horse conservation community. Other sanctuaries began developing their own versions of the bridge program, sharing data and experiences to build a more effective approach to wild horse rehabilitation across the country. One particularly cold morning, Emely arrived at the sanctuary to find Sierra and Maverick standing together at their favorite observation point, watching the sunrise over the desert landscape. The sight sparked memories of their rescue, but now instead of desperation, she saw strength, purpose, and the unexpected ways that life could transform challenges into opportunities. The bridge program had grown beyond anyone's initial expectations, and at its heart were two extraordinary horses who had turned their own story of survival into a legacy of hope for others. Sierra and Maverick had not only found their place in the world, but had helped create a new understanding of what was possible in wild horse conservation. Their journey had come full circle, from a desperate search in the wilderness to a pioneering role in helping other wild horses find their way. As Emely watched them in the early morning light, she knew that their story would continue to inspire and guide the sanctuary's work for years to come. 1 year after their dramatic rescue, Sierra and Maverick stood in their special paddock at the Wild Horse Sanctuary, their presence a living testament to the power of survival, adaptation, and the unique bonds between horses and humans. The morning sun cast a golden glow across the desert landscape, highlighting the remarkable changes that had transformed both horses from desperate survivors into pioneering teachers. Emely leaned against the fence, taking a moment to appreciate how far they'd come. Maverick had grown into a striking yearling, his dark coat gleaming with health as he moved with the natural grace of his wild heritage. Sierra remained the picture of maternal wisdom, her calm presence continuing to influence newly arrived horses in ways that still amazed the sanctuary staff. "The latest statistics are remarkable," Dr. Chen announced during the morning's program review. She displayed graphs showing significantly reduced rehabilitation times for horses introduced through the bridge program. Sierra's group consistently shows better adjustment rates and lower stress levels than our traditional rehabilitation methods. The program had expanded beyond its initial scope, now including a network of partner facilities across the western United States. Each sanctuary had adapted the core principles developed through Sierra and Maverick's case, creating a more effective approach to wild horse rehabilitation nationwide. John Martinez stood before a group of visiting conservation experts using Sierra and Maverick's story to illustrate the sanctuary's innovative methods. What began as a desperate rescue has evolved into a complete reimagining of how we approach wild horse rehabilitation, he explained, gesturing toward the paddock where mother and son demonstrated their natural teaching abilities. The sanctuary's daily routine had been transformed by the insights gained from their experience. New arrivals were now carefully introduced to the rehabilitation process through controlled interactions with mentor horses like Sierra, who seemed to innately understand how to bridge the gap between wild freedom and necessary human care. Miguel, had refined his training protocols based on countless hours observing Sierra's interactions with other horses. "She shows us something new almost every day," he remarked, watching as she guided a nervous new arrival through its first approach to the feeding stations. "It's like she remembers her own journey and knows exactly what these horses need." Maverick had developed his own unique role in the program, particularly effective with young horses struggling to adjust to sanctuary life. His playful nature and natural confidence provided a perfect complement to his mother's calming presence, showing nervous foals that the sanctuary could be a place of safety and joy. The afternoon sun highlighted the contrast between the Sierra of today and the desperate mare they'd found searching for her baby a year ago. She moved with quiet purpose through her daily routine, her previous experience at the sanctuary blending seamlessly with her wild instincts to create something entirely new in the world of wild horse rehabilitation. Emely's detailed documentation of their journey had become a valuable resource for the wider conservation community. The key was recognizing that trauma could be transformed into teaching, she explained during a workshop for other sanctuary managers. Sierra and Maverick showed us that sometimes our greatest challenges can lead to our most important breakthroughs. The Bridge program's success had attracted attention from wildlife conservation organizations around the world. Researchers came to study the unique dynamics between mentor horses and new arrivals, fascinated by the way Sierra's presence seemed to accelerate the rehabilitation process. Dr. Chen had compiled a comprehensive study of the physiological changes observed in horses introduced through the program. "We're seeing measurable differences in stress hormone levels," she reported, sharing data that showed significantly lower cortisol levels in horses that interacted with Sierra compared to those in traditional rehabilitation settings. The sanctuary's Education Center now featured an interactive exhibit dedicated to Sierra and Maverick's story, using their journey to illustrate the complex challenges facing wild horse conservation and the innovative solutions being developed to address them. Visitors were consistently moved by the tale of maternal devotion that had evolved into a groundbreaking approach to wildlife rehabilitation. As winter approached again, the sanctuary prepared for its annual evaluation of the bridge program's impact. The numbers told an impressive story: faster rehabilitation times, higher success rates for eventual release, and improved welfare outcomes for horses that remained in sanctuary care. Emely found herself reflecting on the moment she'd first spotted Sierra searching the canyons for her lost foal. The desperation of that time seemed distant now, transformed by the unexpected ways their story had influenced wild horse conservation. What had begun as a race against time to save 2 lives had become a journey of discovery that continued to yield new insights. The sanctuary's approach to rehabilitation had been fundamentally changed by their experience with Sierra and Maverick. Traditional methods focused on minimizing human contact were now balanced with the recognition that some horses, like Sierra, could serve as natural intermediaries between the wild and human worlds. Miguel worked closely with other trainers to develop standardized protocols for identifying and preparing potential mentor horses. Not every rehabilitated horse has Sierra's special abilities, he explained during a training session. But understanding what makes her successful helps us recognize similar potential in other horses. The afternoon light cast long shadows across the sanctuary, as Emely observed Sierra introducing another group of new arrivals to sanctuary life. The mare's methods were subtle but effective, a combination of body language, quiet confidence, and perfectly timed interactions that seemed to speak directly to the wild horse's instincts. Maverick's role continued to evolve as he matured. His unique upbringing, combining wild heritage with early exposure to sanctuary life, had created a horse who moved effortlessly between both worlds. His presence often helped ease the transition for younger horses, showing them that accepting human care didn't mean losing their wild spirit. The success of the bridge program had led to the development of specialized training areas throughout the sanctuary. These spaces were designed to facilitate the careful introduction of new arrivals to mentor horses while maintaining appropriate safety boundaries for all animals involved. As the day drew to a close, Emely made her final notes in the program's documentation. The story of Sierra and Maverick had become more than just a dramatic rescue. It was now a living example of how adversity could lead to innovation, and how the bond between mother and foal could transform an entire approach to wildlife conservation. The sanctuary's lights began to illuminate the gathering dusk, casting a warm glow over the paddocks where Sierra and Maverick stood together, their silhouettes a powerful reminder of their journey from desperate survival to pioneering purpose. Their legacy would continue through the countless wild horses whose lives would be touched by the program they had inspired. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, more horses in need of rehabilitation, and further refinements to the bridge program. But for now, in the quiet of the evening, Emely took a moment to appreciate the extraordinary path that had led them here, a path that began with a mother's desperate search and ended with a discovery that would change wild horse conservation forever. As the stars emerged over the Nevada desert, Sierra and Maverick's story had become more than just a tale of survival. It had evolved into a beacon of hope for wild horse conservation worldwide. The bridge program they inspired continued to grow, touching the lives of countless Mustangs and changing the way sanctuaries approached rehabilitation. One evening, as Emely completed her final rounds, she found Sierra and Maverick standing at their favorite observation point, gazing out over the sanctuary grounds. The sight brought her back to that stormy day in Devil's Fingers, when a desperate search led to an extraordinary discovery. The frightened foal and anxious mare had transformed into confident teachers, their unique bond helping forge new paths in wild horse rehabilitation. Sierra's gentle nickering drew Emely's attention to a group of newly arrived Mustangs in the adjacent paddock. Even now, a year later, the mare's natural ability to comfort and guide other horses remained remarkable. Maverick, standing tall beside his mother, had grown into his role as a bridge between worlds, his playful spirit helping countless young horses adjust to sanctuary life. The bridge program had expanded beyond their wildest expectations. What started as one mare's desperate search for her foal had blossomed into a revolutionary approach to wild horse rehabilitation. Sanctuaries across the country now implemented similar programs, using Sierra and Maverick's story as a model for their own rehabilitation efforts. Dr. Chen's research had documented remarkable results. Rehabilitation times cut in half, stress levels significantly reduced, and success rates for eventual release dramatically improved. But beyond the statistics lay the real heart of their achievement, the countless moments of connection between scared wild horses and their gentle mentors. As darkness settled over the sanctuary, Emely watched Sierra guide Maverick toward their evening feeding station. Their movements were synchronized, a dance of mutual trust and understanding that had grown stronger through their shared journey. The bond between mother and foal, tested by separation and strengthened through survival, had become a gift to every wild horse that followed in their hoofprints. The sanctuary's lights twinkled in the gathering dusk, creating a peaceful atmosphere that seemed worlds away from the desperate circumstances that had brought Sierra and Maverick to this place. Yet it was precisely those challenges that had led to their greatest triumph, showing that even in the darkest moments, hope could flourish and transform into something extraordinary. Their legacy lived on in every successful rehabilitation, every grateful nicker from a formerly frightened horse, and every triumph of trust over fear. The Bridge program stood as testament to the power of maternal love, the resilience of the wild spirit, and the unexpected ways that adversity could lead to innovation. Sierra and Maverick's story had become more than just a rescue tale. It was a reminder that sometimes the most powerful changes come from the most desperate circumstances. Their journey from lost and afraid to pioneers of a new approach in wild horse conservation continued to inspire both the sanctuary staff and visitors from around the world. As Emely prepared to leave for the night, she took one last look at the pair, silhouetted against the desert sky. Their story had touched countless hearts and changed numerous lives, both equine and human. It served as a powerful reminder that in the world of wildlife conservation, every life saved could lead to lessons that help save many more. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Subscribe to our channel and join us in making a difference in the lives of these magnificent creatures. Like this video and share it with others who believe in the power of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds between mothers and their children. Together, we can continue to write new chapters in the ongoing story of wild horse conservation, ensuring that horses like Sierra and Maverick will always have a chance to run free. Remember, every view, every share, and every subscription helps spread awareness about the importance of protecting these incredible animals. Join our community today and be part of the journey to preserve the wild spirit of America's Mustangs for generations to come. Hit that subscribe button now, and let's make a difference together. Your support helps sanctuaries like ours continue their vital work, giving more horses like Sierra and Maverick a second chance at life. Thank you for being part of their remarkable journey, and we'll see you in our next video, where more inspiring stories of hope, survival, and triumph await.